This is Kevin from Agency UX. When I started my company 8 years ago, we were a pretty small design team, and that was actually pretty good because we got pretty small projects, things that were just, a week or two in long where we could just kind of hop in, execute on the job and produce some pretty high quality design and, and exit and everyone's happy. Well, as time went on, we got more clients and we started to get bigger and bigger projects. And I started to feel the pressure. These projects were ones that were being asked to solve like more and more complex design problems. Those things where the solution isn't quite obvious and they actually take a lot of time and steps. It could be several months, and sort of like many iterations of doing some design and prototyping, doing some research and learning from like what works for people and sort of checking in with your strategy and making sure that everything is kind of in tune. Well, anyways, I started looking at some, bigger companies at the time and, had how they were sort of handling like bigger complex projects. And, what I saw were a few things. One is that a lot of them had a pretty rigid process. Essentially, most of the projects that kind of flowed through their company followed more or less the same, series of steps. And, this had, some drawbacks, right? So, I think that, one of them is that there's a lot of time spent waiting around where there isn't actual like design work getting done, but, whether like the vendor's waiting for the agency or the agency is waiting for the client or, vice versa, there's just, a lot of this like kind of like lag time that's happening. There's also some, debate over like what comes next. And you would think with a rigid process, that really isn't up for discussion, right? Like, of course, what step follows step number two, right? It's step three. But really, in the real world, on projects where you learn something unexpected, from, your target audience or the client sort of changes their mind or, the business strategy kind of shifts, new information comes in, right? And so therefore, there is this debate over like, wait, do we stick with that or do we need to somehow kind of adjust? And that's really like the third point. A lot of these design companies had this inability to pivot, right? So new information is coming in all the time. And if you're kind of locked into something, you end up kind of spinning your wheels. And when you think about what should be done, sometimes what can happen is like you get this like surprise change order, right? Which is not fun for anybody. It's kind of a difficult conversation. But essentially it's what happens when you kind of stick with that plan when you just didn't know quite as much as you do, 3-4 weeks into the project. So, I realized that, for a lot of these design companies, big and small, really the key factor that determines success for them is that they all had these small teams or these individuals on the teams that knew how to work really, really well with design. Now, what do I mean by working with design? I mean, they are people that understood how to get things done efficiently. They understood how to achieve and maintain team alignment. And they also knew, how to get client approvals. They could do what it takes. They could read almost between the lines, if you will, and say the right things and have the right materials ready to basically get the project across the finish line. So, fast forward to today, my company, we operate on a larger scale, but we still maintain the ability to design very, very efficiently. So today I'm going to share 2 ways that you can work with design efficiently and make your clients happy. And this applies to, anyone from a small production team all the way to a very large one. Okay. So the first way is to multi-track your design. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is exploring multiple design options simultaneously. So what I don't mean is just like one design idea that you have a lot of heart for, like it's your favorite, the team like loves it. And so you kind of put that forth and you figure like, oh, let's just tweak a few things here, change the color, change this component. And you make it seem like there are multiple design options there, where really it's one idea with a couple different flavors. What I'm talking about are radically different concepts, dreaming those up, creating them, and presenting them to the client. And the reason why I'm a proponent of creating like very different design ideas and kind of presenting those is that you want to get really diverse feedback from the client. You almost want to force them to react to more ideas, even if you may or may not have a lot of heart for, all of them, or they may be expensive and time consuming to execute versus like quick and easy, wins. The idea there is really to present them with sort of a multiple choice concept and get their feedback on everything versus, what might traditionally happen is to the design team to create like one idea and present it as a V1, and maybe, that really misses the mark. So then the client says, okay, well, why don't you go back to the drawing board, and then you rework it or kind of scrap it, come up with something new, and you present that as a V2, and they say, okay, you're getting warmer, and then you kind of take that back and there's like a V3 and you're getting closer yet. Well, it's that linear approach that ends up taking much, much more time, and getting more feedback from the client sooner in the process is really what matters when you're problem solving. Okay. Step number 2 here, or way number 2, design earlier than you expect. Now, this might sound like a no-brainer for many of you listening, but oftentimes we see clients who don't have all the requirements gathered, right? Or they don't know exactly what they want. Like they're kind of close, but it's really kind of like vague, and they want to spend a little more time kind of noodling on it. And, they'll come back to you and, they're kind of pushing the project schedule out, right? Which sounds fine in the beginning, but if there are hard dates, like for a campaign or whatever, yeah, that could be a little bit nerve-wracking. So instead of saving time by just waiting for the client to be ready, my position is that you can literally save time by helping clients articulate what they want by sketching out those ideas with them. So even if those design ideas aren't quite right, like they're not really going to be what's pursued for like something that you're going to put into production, you'll have a richer understanding of what the client does and does not want. And by setting yourself up with this collaboration, you'll likely end up saving time when design officially kicks off. And of course, as we all know, it never hurts to be better prepared. All right. So I hope these design production tips are useful. Until next time, take care.